And yeah, we welcome you to ask questions in the chat and really hope to have a lively discussion with you all today. And just as an accessibility need, closed captioning is available if you would like. And yeah, hoping to go deeper in what the power building cohort can offer, hopefully, your organization. Before we also start, I'm going to do um, an acknowledgement of the Potawatomi land that I am calling from the Midwest, and invite you to share which native land you're calling from in Turtle Nation, Turtle Island. And yeah, just also emphasizing that shifting power also means Indigenous sovereignty efforts are part of that. So we invite you to, beyond a land acknowledgement, to pay your honor or land tax. Currently, NCG is paying R3 honor and land tax with Segurite Land Trust, the Wiyot tribe with the Wiyot honor tax, and the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone Yunkin land tax. And yeah, we hope that it also, if you have questions on this about what does it mean to pay land tax, how does it connect it to power, moving resources, please reach out to me or the person I will be introducing right now, Dwayne Marsh, our president and CEO, who will guide us through some of the origin of this program and share a little bit more about NCG. Thanks for being here. Passing the mic to you, Dwayne.
Thanks, Q. Thanks, team, and really welcome everyone. So excited that you guys took the time to explore this opportunity with us. This type of learning community really epitomizes our role at NCG as a convener, a collaborator about building shared learning environments, and our increased attention both to racial equity as our metronome and also to impact, right? Not just learning, but taking action. And you'll see that in the evolution of what we've done with this program. It's actually hard to believe this is the third edition. Um, from humble origins, great things can arise. We actually were approached by a member who had held a conversation on C4 grant making back in 2022. And they said, you know what? It was okay, but I felt like it wasn't my strength to facilitate that conversation. Could you guys help? And from that simple request, an exploration of what this could look like emerged. We did the first round 2 years ago, learned a lot there, and then we thought maybe it could happen again. And we reached out and found there was a lot of interest and growing interest in C4 grant making and affiliated C3 strategies. So we did it again. And we weren't sure if there would be an audience this time around, but we've been hearing again of great interest. So we're really pleased to offer this cycle. And I think as you've learned in the sector, we've learned, and so this really could be our most exciting run of the program to date. It really couldn't come at a more important time. I'm not going to be redundant in sharing the significance of the moment, um, capital M, right? But at the same time, this series acknowledges that it's more than that. The moment matters, but it's the entire life cycle of building movement and support of democracy that we really have to protect. And this is a really powerful tool that we have in C4 grant making that can do that. And so we hope to share more about that. I'll just say you guys are a bit of envy of the sector. My counterparts in other parts of the country have been asking about this program we do and how to get foundations to take part. And do they really run with this? And so they're watching us to see how we make it work and see if they can emulate it as well. So that they can get a preview of how we do that. And by we, I mean all of us, right? We facilitate and bring the experts and from community, but it's really the collective efforts that make the program sail. So I'm really hoping that you'll hear something today that intrigues you to take that step, build a team, join the conversation, and ultimately move to action. So Q, thanks for the moment to send greetings and appreciation, and let's get on with it.
Thank you, Dwayne. And really helpful to kind of ground in the history of the program and where it came from and the needs of it. So for today, I'm really excited to give space to my esteemed and brilliant team to share with you what to expect with this learning community, what is exactly in the curriculum. We'll also hear from one of last year's participants who will share how he's been able to really integrate the learnings into his work, create some institutional change, and really use C4 as a power building strategy and tool within his institution. And so pretty straightforward next hour or so together. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, hoping to have a lively and dynamic discussion. And with that, I will pass it to the NCG lead on the C4 Power Building cohort, my colleague Victoria Rodarte.
Good morning, folks. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Victoria Rodarte. I use she, her pronouns. I'm NCG's and Senior Democracy Fellow, and so this has really become my baby. Before I dive into sort of what you're here to learn about with the curriculum and the structure and everything, just hope you indulge me a few minutes on some questions so that we kind of can get to know each other. So, in the chat, I would love for you to share whether one, your foundation has ever made any grants to C4 organizations in the past. And that can be like a quick yes, no, I don't know. Okay. So I'm seeing some no's, I'm seeing some yeses. This is great. Great. For those of you who have said no, I'm curious if you could share what has prevented you and your organization from making grants to C4 organizations. And feel free to put it in the chat. We're a small group, so you're also welcome to come off mute and share a little bit about that.
I'm sorry, the question was, why haven't we done it?
Yes. If you haven't, what has prevented you? Are there any barriers? Any, maybe you don't have a policy, don't have a clear strategy?
This is Glenn from Stepsky. I'll just say that I don't think we know what we can do, especially as a C3. Um, our donors are no longer around. The money's already pretty much locked in. So I'm not sure. So I'm thinking more about the future, honestly, post Stepsky.
Okay. That's perfectly normal. I think one of the things we're trying to address with this cohort is sort of is to demystify some of those perceptions about what C3s, public foundations, private foundations can do with their tax status. So thanks for sharing, Glenn. I'm seeing also in the chat, no knowledge or strategy internally, not enough information on the regulatory environment. We haven't discussed the strategy with our board, and a little bit about grant making policies as well. Okay. That was helpful to hear. And I asked those questions because as I share through the curriculum, we try to tailor each session to the folks who are in our cohort. So knowing what some of those perceptions and barriers that you are facing that prevent you from sort of joining the C4 strategy helps us tailor that information to you. So I'm going to move forward and just talk a little bit about what our overarching goals are for this learning community. And then I'll get a little bit into the structure and the curriculum. So as far as our goals, we have four. So number one is we want to provide an educational opportunity for funders to learn about the opportunities that they have to provide C4 and C4 aligned funding. And when we talk about C4 aligned funding, we really mean support for C4 organizations or C3 strategies that also complement those C4 organizations. Our second goal is to address some of those barriers and misperceptions that limit funders from engaging in C4 aligned funding. And those are things that you all have mentioned already, some around grant making policies, some around information, some around not having the systems in place. Third, we want to plant the seeds for ongoing collaboration among our NCG members, among funders, our community partners, and the broader field. And then lastly, I mean, this is pretty obvious with the democracy in my title. We want to deepen funder engagement in power building and democracy work. So now I'll get a little bit into what the program looks like. As far as structure, we have 4 3-hour sessions that we are going to put on about every 6 to 8 weeks from May to November. The first session will be in person and the rest will be virtual, with the caveat of if the cohort is interested, we might build in a little bit more in-person connection time so that you all can continue to collaborate. We expect that you'll spend about 2 or 3 hours in between sessions on things like pre-reading, prep, and the occasional homework assignments. So that might look like, looking through your existing portfolio to see which of your current grantees have C4 sister arms, or looking at your portfolio to see which grantees are already receiving multi-year general operating support, which is a really important strategy in supporting C4 organizations. Each session is going to include significant educational content. We have a curriculum that I will dive a little bit deeper into in a minute. We'll have speakers that include movement leaders, organizers, technical experts, and other C4 aligned funders. And we'll have opportunities for peer learning, which includes discussions on readings, talking about some of the challenges and opportunities that are coming up for you, and other collaborative activities. So here you'll see a list of some of the thematic topics that we'll cover throughout the series, and that'll come up across the arc. But what I want to do with these next couple of minutes is sort of walk you through the different topics that we'll cover in each of the 4 sessions so that you can really see the arc of the content throughout the series. So in session 1, as I said, this will be in late May. We will focus on setting some shared alignment and definitions on what we all mean by power building, multiracial democracy, C4 aligned funding, and how all of this connects together and builds on each other. We'll do some collaborative work to map out the ecosystem that we're already a part of and identify our individual and institutional learning goals. And we'll be in person, so we'll start to get to know each other. We'll plant the seeds for ongoing collaboration. Following that, we'll have a little bit of a longer break between session 1 and 2 because of our upcoming annual conference in June, but we'll come back together in August for session 2, where we'll walk through the different opportunities and avenues that you'll have as a funder to incorporate C4 aligned funding into your grant making strategies. So that looks like, if you're already engaging in civic engagement or voter engagement, the traditional sort of power building work, what are those pieces under the surface, the policy, the research, the narrative, that also present opportunities to invest in either C4 or C3 aligned complementary funding strategies? We'll highlight some of the movement leaders that utilize both C3 and C4 strategies and learn the importance of long-term C4 investments. Session 3 will be in September. By this time, we will be grounded in the what and the why of C4 aligned funding, and then we'll get into the how you can invest in C4 aligned strategies with your existing portfolio. We'll hear from technical experts, folks like Boulder Advocacy at Alliance for Justice, and we'll hear from seasoned C4 funders to address the nitty-gritty about the legal guidelines, the best practices, the systems you need, and the tools. This is actually one of my favorite sessions. It's a little wonky, but I think it really sets up our foundation teams to really integrate a lot of the learnings. And then lastly, we will wrap up the series in October. The last session will be grounded in the upcoming election, while we explore how this work is part of a broader life cycle of democracy and movement building. Our vision is that by the end of this, you will leave with the commitment to one action that you can take to move along your C4 learning journey. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you've learned a little bit about what you'll be learning, about what we have to offer. And so I know you're sitting there thinking, is this opportunity for me? So we want to make it clear right off the bat. Any foundation, a public foundation, family foundation, private foundation, can learn about C4 and C4 aligned grant making strategies. There's nothing against that. In the program, we'll get more into the nuances of the limitations depending on the different tax statuses. Second, this curriculum, we've been building this with a beginner in mind. And so those of you who have little to no experience with C4 funding are probably the best fit for this. So maybe you've done a few C4 grants in the past, but you don't have a clear policy. This is the place to come learn a little bit more about how you can implement that. And as you've heard us say, this all comes back to our goal and our mission of driving more resources to our power building partners. So ideally, your existing portfolio includes some power building and or issue-based advocacy strategies. So if you're an education funder or a healthcare funder or a climate funder, please join. The more perspectives around issue priorities we have, the better. And as my colleagues have mentioned already, this is a tool that you can apply to any issue-based grant making that you already have. And then lastly, this is really a team endeavor. Each foundation can register up to 4 people, and we encourage you to bring your colleagues from program staff, grants management, compliance, and even foundation leadership. All folks are welcome, and all folks will have something to bring and something to take from this learning experience. All right, so I've shared the curriculum, I've shared what's coming up. This is sort of what's next. We have a live registration. One of my colleagues will put the registration link in the chat. We'll ask you to answer some short questions around your current work so that we can tailor the individual sessions to the folks who are participating in this opportunity. We've set a deadline of April 26th so that we can have time to formulate the cohort and finalize the participants before our May 29th start date. And as far as cost, members have a registration fee of $2,500 for a foundation team of 2 to 4, with a non-member registration fee of $4,000. And lastly, so that you get a sense of the broad range of folks who have participated, we've listed our network of alumni here, which includes community foundations, private foundations, and family foundations across several different issue area priorities. And so that was a lot of information. I just want to take a pause and see if there are any questions that you can put in the chat or come off mute.
Thanks so much, Victoria. Can I hop in with a quick question? I'm curious, you mentioned encouraging foundations to bring up to 4 folks and like a mix of program and grants management staff are welcome. Would you say that you have found with your previous participants that it's really much more effective to have more than 1 participant per foundation? Or have you also had in the past a lot of folks attend just on their own?
This program has mostly done team participation. We've had, I want to say 1 or 2 participate individually, and I will offer that as a case-by-case basis. If you're interested in participating individually, get in touch with me. Because this is an institutional strategy, it really does make more sense for a team to participate so that there is institutional support to start implementing some of these strategies internally. But if you are a sort of a solo staff or sort of in a leadership position, please reach out and we can chat about what makes sense.
Thanks, super helpful.
I just wanted to add that your question of having people across teams, we also think that having people across positional power can also really help move institutional change with a strategy like this. Kim, you had a question?
Hi, thanks for the information. I'm just curious if you can just anecdotally share from the previous participants. I'm really curious how they've taken the information back to their organizations. Have any of them started to fund C4s, or are they in the process? Like, I'm just curious about the impacts within their organizations?
Yeah, great question. So we actually will have a alum speak in a few minutes. We're waiting for him to come online. And he'll share a little bit about his experience, but I can actually share. I participated in this cohort as a staff member of the Haas Junior Fund the first year, and that's a private family foundation. We weren't doing any support grants, but one of the skills and tools that I took away was learning what, as a private foundation, we could do to sort of fund up to the line of C4. So that included perfectly allowable C3 funding for advocacy and voter engagement, and also thinking about how to use tools like expenditure responsibility grants to fund C4 organizations for C3 work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say it was so compelling that Victoria ended up joining us and to run the program. So it's like that old commercial. I bought the company. Um, I would just name that people have last year in particular, people came with the goal by the end of the run. We did it, I think, September to December, August to December, that they would figure out the tangible action within their institution they could do to build awareness and understanding. So it both took advantage of the team structure and advanced the work as people went. One other thing I just came to mind as I was looking at that alumni list, some of those alumni might send another team of folks who they want to widen the exposure range within the team of who understands what's happening. So you might see some of those folks as colleagues participating or with a new group going through this cycle as well.
Yeah. And Q, thank you. We've included 2 stories of past participants. So one from Heising Simons, who participated in 2022. They now have an affiliated C4 arm to their foundation that strictly funds C4 work. And then our alumni from last year, the Healthcare Foundation of Northern Sonoma County, who was a lot newer to this work, and really this learning really helped them to think about how to talk to their board about incorporating more advocacy and power building work into their strategies.
This is Glenn again. I'm curious, it's maybe a controversial question, but is there any opportunity to speak with some of the folks kind of outside of our bubble, the ones on the right that have used C4, I would say 10 times more effectively than the left? Do you ever bring anyone like that on to talk about their approach?
I'm not sure if they want to talk with us, but that's a great question.
I'll talk with you. I'm not concerned about that.
You should let us know if you have someone in mind in particular. And I think it's actually a question.
If you're throwing it back to me, Dwayne, I'll go ahead and I'll see what I can do.
Well, no, and I think it's a question that's larger than just this, learning year. It's like that question of dialogue is a pretty deep one we need to take on.
Yeah, I was just thinking from the perspective of strategies, how they've used it, innovated it. I don't know if there's a reason for dialogue.
Glenn, I think there is a lot to learn around how deeply and broadly the right has invested in sort of this entire ecosystem, from the voter engagement to the policy to the research to the narrative work. There is that lesson there. Like Q said, I don't think we could find somebody that would want to talk to us in this sort of lens that we're using. But I think we'll bring that lesson, and there are definitely technical experts, so an attorney that we've had present to us in the past to talk about how to take that lesson and use the pieces of funding, narrative funding, convenings for more progressive grant making.
Yeah, but we've definitely talked about this a lot internally around how the right is using this as such an effective strategy, and more progressive left philanthropy is falling behind around it as a clear strategy. So there's definitely case studies. The case studies that we use don't have that same lens or some of the values they're using, but it's an interesting question around what is there to learn.
And also I think even if we didn't have someone speak with us, like if we slow down just a minute and look at we name some of the things that they're effective at doing that we don't tend to do as a sector. So even if we just took a little beat to unpack that, could have some value, like because some of those steps we could take.
Yeah. I see a question in the chat around tentative dates. So we do have advertised the dates online already. Let me see if I can sort of run them off from the top of my head. Session 1 will be May 29th. Session 2 will be August 1st or August 2nd, September 11th, and October 23rd. And they're all 3 hours from 10 to 1. Thank you, Q, for putting in the link.
Mm-hmm. And then Claire also had a question of if participants can't make the dates, will we be recording sessions and sending them out?
Yes, we will record every session. We also have been getting into the practice of, for each session, taking detailed notes and putting out a summary for our participants, as well as a document of like lessons learned from the different presenters. So you'll have access to recordings, notes, as well as a repository of all the different resources that come up through our conversations, as well as resources from past cohorts.
These are great, both strategic and logistical questions. So
Yeah.
Thank you. I wonder if there's any other reflections or questions for folks.
The only thing I would name is just that we are a network that benefits from peer action. So if in hearing this, you think of a colleague or a foundation that you think might have some interest who may not be here or might want to be made aware, do let us know. We have several weeks before we, close registration, and certainly could make people aware and share the recording from this event as well. I can just speak to this. I don't have any scientific data on this, but I was at a couple of gatherings in the last few months with colleague PSOs, and people were really intrigued by this. I actually could do a little homework, and we have a listserv where I could find out if anybody is doing something similar, so I can make a note of that. And I'll let you know once you sign up and join the program.
Yeah, and just to add, Kim, we've definitely had people interested on a more national level, and thinking about what is the regional strategy needed. And so we are thinking about this from a Northern California approach as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your really insightful questions. I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Liana, who will introduce our alum.
Yay, thank you, Victoria, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Liana Molina. I started in September as our Director for Policy and Movement, and it's my pleasure to announce our guest speaker, previous program participant, Josh Lee, who is a Senior Program Officer at the East Bay Community Foundation. Prior to his work at EBCF, he was a multicultural fellow with the San Francisco Foundation. And before his work in philanthropy, he served as the executive director of APAL, which is a youth-led grassroots organization based here in Oakland. So good morning, Josh. Thank you for joining us. Really glad to have you, because what better way for people to hear about the program than from someone who went through it themselves. So I'm going to start off with the first question about why your team signed up and what were the East Bay Community Foundation's goals in participating in last year's cohort.
All right, great. Yeah, really excited to be here just to talk about our experience. I've actually gone through both the cohorts that NCG has offered. The first one when it was titled Sharpening the Edge, and then the second one where it was focused really on power building in the title. And so, I clearly am a big fan of the work that you all are doing. And we at EBCF have benefited a lot in our role as a community foundation and the unique role that we have to do C4 grant making. So I think the main reason why we wanted to participate was really around actually doing some more learning and evaluating the history of our own grant making, while also making sure that we're really on point and shoring up our knowledge of the different restrictions and different parameters around C4 giving. I think that in general, our goal for our big picture reason for participating was around making sure that we're also doing our homework and that we're can add to the expertise that our folks on the ground have. Our folks on the ground doing the work have to have the expertise. They have to get it right. Otherwise, there's certain consequences. And so I think as partners in philanthropy, I think it's really vital that we also have that same level of expertise and can possibly even offer TA or other insights from our role in foundation world.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a really important point, and part of the program that we're trying to integrate more is the peer-to-peer learning and kind of the coaching, the troubleshooting. So you already started telling us about your experience, but can you talk more about some of your takeaways? What did you learn and what did you accomplish by the end of the last cohort?
Last one, yeah. Great. Yeah. The for me, even though I'm coming from movement work, I've mostly done youth organizing, and there was not a lot of there's like voter engagement and get out the vote, but not a lot of direct C4 type of campaign situations. So and because of the ways that young people have been sort of are not enfranchised in the same way as adults to engage to engage civically. Although some of that is changing for the movements of young people, I really knew very little sort of about C4 giving and not a whole lot around elections. Most of my community organizing has, been around stuff at city council or stuff in our neighborhoods or anti-violence prevention and, ethnic studies, those sorts of things. So I really felt like, again, wanting to match the knowledge that our grantee partners have around C4 work. And so the project that we selected in the last cohort was around creating a guidebook for C4 giving at EBCF. I don't know if this is similar to other folks at your institutions, but a lot of the times I have found that there's often an individual or staff or two that maybe have like a lot of knowledge on, how to do the C4 giving and what the parameters are, or maybe know the right person to talk to. But if that person leaves or if that person's not available or if they don't know the answer, then we don't really have the documentation. I'll say at EBCF, we didn't before currently have the documentation to review and sort of have a step-by-step guide of, okay, in this situation, we have done this, or in this situation, we would do this based on our understanding of the parameters and our understanding of the approaches that are most beneficial for folks doing the work on the ground. So that was what we identified as what we wanted. And it was really great because not only were we able to, we're still finalizing it. It's currently, 15 pages, probably going to end up being about 20 or 25 pages. It's not a short guidebook per se. But we want it to be an end all be all location that we can refer to no matter who's on our staff. And so the great thing I think that we learned is that we have since 2018 at EBCF been doing a lot of C4 grant making and expanding our use of that tool. And because we have a lot of case studies and sort of like situations from the past that we can refer to, which one helps us be more accurate, and two helps us, stay consistent with our giving and our communications with grantee partners. And so that was something I didn't necessarily think. I thought maybe, we'll look at the Boulder advocacy stuff or look at the other materials that NCG is providing and formulate something new. But we actually were able to, look back at what we've done and learn from our own history, both things that went well, maybe things that we would do differently moving forward after going through the cohort. So I think that was kind of an added layer. And having a coach or having some folks peer-to-peer to refer to was, I think, a big plus from the first, which I think you all took that feedback from the first cohort and really emphasized having that ability, and I think it played out really well for us.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that rich experience. And I, for one, was really impressed with your and Hannah's presentation at the end of the last cohort to kind of lay out this guidebook. And we're really excited to see the final product. And from what I remember, you were going to make that accessible to peers in the sector who are interested in emulating this work. So we're really excited about that. So I want to ask how, in addition to developing this resource, you plan to integrate what you've learned into your work moving forward and kind of sharpening and refining.
Yeah. I mean, again, a big thing for us is that, our in-house specialists, around this stuff transitioned in September, out of EBCF. And so, and they were like a self-proclaimed, elections nerd. And we really missed that. So having, we were able to get a lot of her experience and roll it in to this guidebook. But I mean, I think this coming up, obviously this year, well, every year we want to maximize, but especially during election years, we want to maximize our support of C4 giving. We understand that. I mean, my understanding is really that this piece around increasing the use of 501c3 entities has really come from the organizers on the ground, who see it as a viable and necessary method for organizing for power. And so I think, situations like this where you've got this cohort, everyone's trying to be responsive as funders. And so I think we're just trying to answer that call. And so in order to integrate, moving forward, it's just like we need this guidebook. We need to make sure that we're doing it right. We need to make sure that we're offering our end of the bargain when it comes to power building from a C4 angle, which is not just resources, but what can we do beyond resources, and what other insights can we offer? So I really feel like it's sort of our duty to get on this stuff accurately. So I think that still continues to be the main way that we're thinking about this and wanting to integrate it, is just continuing to sharpen our understanding and what our role is and how we can support other foundations who maybe don't have the same status that we do as a community foundation. As community foundations, we play a big role in leveraging C4 grant making and can do a lot more. But and so we also want to support our peers that maybe want to move resources and have some limitations.
Thank you again for sharing your experience and your expertise around this topic. And I did want to lift up a couple points you made. One is just around, the transitions that within organizations, which is natural and often, it just happens. So documenting the work, the lessons, the best practices is super important. So really appreciate that. And the second point was around rising to the occasion or answering the call, right? And being led by the folks on the ground that are leading our movements and leading these struggles for housing and healthcare and education and all the things. So really appreciate you. I just want to say that for our audience, if folks want to get a feel for another foundation's experience, we would invite you to check out a contribution from Kim Bender from the Healthcare Foundation of Northern Sonoma County, who wrote a really great reflection piece following last year's cohort. So I think one of my colleagues will drop the link in the chat, but definitely check that out. And I think now I'm turning it back to Victoria, or just opening it up for questions, maybe for you, Josh, and what you just shared, or anything that's come up for folks since this last little period. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh and Liana. Josh, if you can stick around a little longer, just in case questions come up for you. Anything else coming up for folks? Good. We've got some congratulations to you, Josh, from Kim in the chat.
Yep.
Um, then I'll pass it to you, Q, to close us out.
Okay. I wonder, as people are really processing and integrating all this information, really want to thank Josh and Liana for giving us space a little more insight on, what's possible with this program and what is the long-term impact, and also how this can create space to be more accountable to people on the ground, right? To move resources to them in this very clear way. But as you're integrating and processing all that, just wondering what's coming up for you and where your institution is, if you feel open to sharing, or um, anything else is coming up that you are like, I really need to understand this before my institution applies for this opportunity or considers this opportunity. Want to make, there's no wrong questions here. Really want to create space for curiosity. Yeah, Joshua?
Thanks, Q, and thanks, Victoria, for this presentation. My question is a little bit outside of this specific presentation today. So there's this All by April campaign where it's asking a lot of foundations to do their grant making by April in terms of this upcoming election year. So we Horizons Foundation has done C4 funding in the past. Our goal is to do some more seed funding by the end of April, and I'm wondering if there was a list of C4 organizations that came out of the last cohort, or if anyone in this group knows a list of amazing C4 organizations that's available to sort of see publicly. I can put my email in the chat. So I don't want to take from the time. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I think that's a great question, Joshua, and also thinking beyond the election cycle too, to,
Right.
fund in a way that really gives people like grantees and movement partners to win now. Yeah, Victoria or Dwayne, if you have any responses.
That's a really good question, Joshua. Let's stay in touch. I will look through the resources that we put together for the last two cohorts and see what we have, and I'll try to share that list as well. Dwayne, I'm wondering if you want to add anything.
No, I was just curious. I saw a little bit about the all in by April, and I wonder if they actually are cultivating any kind of list of players. And then we should also think about other initiatives we have going right now. There might be some list of groups that we know are doing good work that have been vetted. So we'll definitely circle back to you, Joshua. And for those who choose to join the cohort, we certainly can share in the first session anything that's come out of that. I'm sure it's all about April, but I'm sure it'll still be appreciated in May. So
yeah, there was that landscape analysis that was part of the first cohort that may have a list that San Francisco Foundation conducted. So we can check that out and see. I mean, although it's a couple of years old, I think it probably still is going to be relevant.
Yeah. I would also uplift, depending, Joshua, on sort of the issue area you're interested in, but there are great coalitions in the Bay Area: Bay Rising, Oakland Rising, San Francisco Rising, Silicon Valley Rising, and some, if not all, have affiliated action funds.
Thanks, Victoria.
Yeah, great question. Super relevant actually to our discussion. And yeah, we will follow up with you, Joshua. Wondering if anyone else is wrestling with anything around timing and with the election, or seeing this as a strategy. I'm seeing some people come on camera, and I'm like, does that mean you want to ask a question, or are you just very excited?
I am excited and I want to ask a question. Thank you
Love
for this.
it.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I was wondering, in terms of the elections, this is not specific to this the fund, but is there any knowledge sharing about voter turnout? How do we get young people engaged? that's disaggregated data by geography or by race. I'd love to, learn from others if anyone is producing that research.
Yeah, great question for your peers in the space too, Perla. Thank you. I wonder if anyone has a response before we jump in.
I can jump in really quickly. Dr. Mindy Romero at the Center for Inclusive Democracy at USC has done incredible research for many, many years around turnout that's usually disaggregated by county, race, ethnicity, and age. I don't know how quickly some of that stuff can be published following, like, for example, the primary, but I would definitely reach out to her or just check out the website.
Dwayne, did you want to add something?
No, I was just reflecting. I think this program is one of the most visible indicators of our increasing commitment to thinking about strengthening democracy and movement work. But just where do we create spaces for these kinds of conversations? I think one of the reasons we all enjoy the C4 sessions so much is because this is what happens in the session. We talk about this kind of stuff. But I'm realizing even we might want to think about spaces for those kind of conversations for folks who aren't thinking C4, but still have these kind of questions. So just reflecting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely deeper questions around data. How do we use it? How do we make sure it's supporting those on the ground?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can see wheels turning, which I love, and processing. Oh, Glenn, did you have something?
Well, I've already asked a few, so
That's
please feel free
okay.
to push me aside. Kind of following up on that, do the participants to this program usually reflect an orientation within the foundation? Meaning, my experience, even on our own staff, is we have some people who have very little interest in policy and politics, and some who, live the stuff, and somewhere in between. That isn't always the orientation of the foundation. So do you tend to find that the people that do the program are people just are individually interested, or they're really representing an institutional orientation?
I would say it really, I mean, we've had what, 23 alumni at this point, and I think it's been the spread. There have been some folks who are coming because their institution's either curious or very curious, and we've had some who the individuals were curious, but there was enough curiosity for them to assemble a team, right? So I don't think we've had anybody show up yet. It's like we've got resistance and nobody wants this to happen at all, and we've got to figure out how to crack that. But there might be, inertia. So it's been the range from some possibility to strong interest.
Yeah. To add to that, I think, having Josh here talk about the East Bay Communities Foundation's history with already having done a lot of C4 funding represents one end of the spectrum. And I think if you look at Kim Bender's story that was put in the chat, I think that would be representing the other end of the spectrum where they've talked about sort of wanting to, like, they haven't really used the language of power building and advocacy up to that point, but participating helped her as a leader talk to her board and start planting those seeds about increasing their investments in that type of work.
Steve, did you want to add something from your experience?
And I think there are also foundations who participate who are interested in the work, but also see this as another tool in the toolkit here for philanthropy. So want to understand how it could be used to affect change and systems change. And so I think there are some folks who are kind of taking that approach. They want to understand what are all the things we have at our disposal to actually impact community and change systems.
right? So they might not have like the technical knowledge of what this means, but the values and vision is there. So sounds like there's a range of how people join. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. We really appreciate the curiosity, Joshua for sharing his insight and experience, and yeah, just grateful to be part of this team moving this forward. And yeah, we will follow up with you based on the questions you asked, and looking forward to hopefully having you join the cohort. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.